What's up, students? Welcome to week number 5. We are really coming up to a close over these next couple of weeks. I hope that the experience that you've had with this course has been good and that we've connected well through this time. And I hope that you've learned something through some of the lecture videos and through some of the reading that you've been doing in projects and stuff like that. Just to share from my heart, one thing about the projects, I know some of that can be a lot each and every week of this online course, but let me remind you that I'm hoping that the projects that we do in this class can be stuff that you can immediately take some time to do now and translate when you get into a full-time student ministry position, that you can translate and use those directly into your ministry. So that's kind of the goal. And so I encourage you, don't just breeze through these things, because these are some things that you could use in the future. So take some time now, and it'll save some time for you in the future, being that you're really prepared when you start a position. Well, we're in week 5, and we're going to look at defining and communicating important values. And then we're also going to start looking at working with parents and partnering with parents, which is a big part of student ministry. And so first of all, we're going to look at defining and communicating important values. Under the lessons tab, you should be able to download a handout that you can fill in the blank and take notes along the way during this lecture video. Why are values so important in ministry? And I want to talk about that. And let me first of all say this, that values is not your mission statement. Okay? And so they're different. But values are what support your mission statement, and values are what you try to create, the culture that you try to create in your youth ministry that supports and helps you accomplish your mission. And so why are values important to a student ministry? Number one, on our notes, values are a way of expressing our purpose. They're a way of expressing our purpose. So if we want to reach kids, then how are we going to do that? We're going to create a value of acceptance. Does that make sense? And so that's kind of an idea there. So number 2, a leader's responsibilities may be different, but the expressed values should be the same. These need to be agreed upon values with your leadership team. It doesn't need to be something that you believe, hey, here's my 5 values of student ministry, and all your small group leaders don't know them, don't practice them, and things like that. You're going to be working against each other in your youth ministry. And so let me encourage you, get on the same page with your team, get your leaders on the same page, and try and all work towards the same goal and implement the same values. Letter B, Doug gives these in his book, Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry, that you've probably read already this week or going to. He gives some suggested values, and he uses an acronym for the word relationships. And I thought these were really good. And you have a project this week on values, and you, I don't want you just to copy directly from him, but this will give you an idea of some values that they have. They have a purpose in youth ministry, but they also have a value system. And this is a lengthy list. I wouldn't use this many. I would probably use around 5 that really kind of make up and shape the culture of your student ministry. But I'll run through these rather quickly today, hopefully not give you too long of a video. But number 1, a relational approach. Leaders earn the right to be heard by first caring about people. Here's the truth. When you get into a position, a lot of times we think, man, everyone should just listen to us just because of our position. And here's the deal. I'll just tell you straight up that leaders and people are going to follow you if you're real rather than when you're always right. And so the truth is, they would rather follow a leader who's real than a leader who's always right. And so my challenge to you is build relationships, care for people, and I promise you the trust will follow that. The problem is too many people try to just automatically allow a ton of people to trust them without having a relational approach to that. So that's value number 1. And value number 2 is this: encouragement. Encouragement. We want our church to be a place where students come and leave encouraged. We don't want them to leave discouraged. We don't want them to leave like, I can never live this Christian life. It's too tough. No, we want them to leave motivated, inspired, and encouraged. Number 3, laughter and celebration. Laughter and celebration. We believe students should have fun and enjoy church. And I love this one because I grew up in a church that was very, very conservative, somewhat legalistic in a lot of ways. And I'll just be honest with you, in our church, like we did have a lot of fun, but when it came to inside the church, it was like fun was a little bit off limits, not as natural. Probably shouldn't have a ton of fun in the church. I want our students to have fun. I want them to enjoy church so that when they graduate high school, they want to be in church. It's not, no, now it's my chance to run the other way. Number 4, acceptance. Acceptance doesn't say, where have you been? It says, welcome back. And that's some language that you need to train your leaders on. Sometimes, I'll just be honest with you, it's hard when you don't have a lot of students. My first student ministry had 4 teenagers in it when it first started. And so I know what it's like when 1 or 2 of them are not there. You're down to 1 or 2 in your ministry. And the truth is, it's hard not to focus. Sometimes we focus so heavily on the ones who are not there and not on the ones who are there. And so I would find myself saying, oh, where's everybody at? But the ones who are there are kind of like, well, I'm here, do you not care that I'm here? And so here's the deal, acceptance. Accept them for who they are, accept them for whatever they look like, accept them for however they believe, accept them for any behaviors that they have going on in their life. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with it. There's a difference between accepting and agreeing. And but you need to accept them into your ministry. Number 5, transparency. Be real with students. We want transparent students in our ministry who have learned from transparent adults. Now, there's a balance. I'm not saying you have to just share your open book of sins that you've committed in your life. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying be transparent. Share where you've struggled in your life, and that will really go a long way with students. Number 6, involvement of students. We don't want students just to attend our programs. We want them to be involved through the expression of their spiritual gifts. We tell students we'd love for you to participate rather than spectate. We don't want students just sitting on the sidelines. We want students in the game. And so for you, figure out ways, ask yourself, hey, is this something that a student can do? Maybe announcements, maybe your prayer time, maybe your music. Occasionally allow them to teach if you have some students feeling that calling of preaching. Is this something that they can do? Think about it within the local church. How can we get students more involved? We want them involved in our ministry. Number 7, outreach, orientation. Here's the truth. We want students to serve their community. We want students outward focused. We want students bringing friends to church. We want students bringing friends to our programs. And so you got to have an outreach focus in your student ministry. Number 8, numerical growth. We are much more concerned in health than numbers. Because health precedes growth, we expect our youth ministry to grow numerically. We don't want to increase by taking in students from other youth ministries. That's not growth. That's swapping sheep. Here's the truth. You should, I know the numbers game is a scary thing because we don't want to be all about numbers. But numbers should be something you evaluate because numbers can dictate the health of your ministry sometimes. For instance, if you drop from 30 students to 10 students on a regular basis in your student ministry, here's the deal. You need to pay close attention to that because something's happening that is pulling them away, and it could be the culture that you've created in your ministry. So numbers are important. Track them. Figure out a way. Take attendance and look for growth. Next year, you should desire to have more students sitting in your youth program than you did today. And so numerical growth is part of it. And so it's a part of it. It shows if you're reaching people. If you don't grow within 5 years, are you really reaching people who don't know Christ? Are you seeing them discipled and join your church? And so numerical growth is a part of it. Number 9, spiritual growth. Our goal is to produce lifelong followers of Jesus. So spiritual growth is a big value that we want to see on a regular basis. We want to see students taking steps. We want to see students, coming in for the first time, accepting Jesus, but then also following him in baptism, learning to bring their Bible, learning to read their Bible on their own, taking steps on, hey, I'm serving for the first time. We want students growing in their faith. Number 10, we want a home-like feeling. A home-like feeling. There's the phrase, there's no place like home. We want to create a homey atmosphere. A atmosphere where kids come and they feel like they're at home. They can feel comfortable. They don't feel pressured to impress anybody. They can be themselves. And that's what we're like at home. You are truly yourself when you're at home. And that's what we want from our students. We want students to feel at home in our church. We want students to belong, and we want to know them by name. That's why we create, the bigger we get, the smaller we think, and we want them to create small groups so that they can be known, loved, and held accountable. Number 11, intimacy. We want them to feel like they can share the deep struggles that they have with a small group leader. We want to connect them with a small group leader that can help them and that can build a strong relationship with them so that they can share some of the struggles that they have in their life. Number 12, professionalism. I know I'm running through this fast, but I'm trying to help you out this week. But number 12, professionalism. We want people in our church and community to take our youth ministry seriously. Here's the truth. I don't like the stigmas that youth pastors and youth ministries get. Some of the myths are like, all you do is play around as a youth pastor. You didn't want to become a real pastor, so you became a youth pastor. You didn't want to grow up and start acting like adults, so you became a youth pastor. Don't youth pastors just play video games every day? Youth pastors are usually always late to stuff. Youth pastors always look sloppy. Youth pastors, they always are on vacation. People consider camps and mission trips and stuff like that vacation. Listen, I want our youth ministry and I want you as a youth leader to be taken seriously. So we have to kill some of those stigmas. So I tell youth pastors when I talk to them, listen, if you want people to take you seriously, be on time, act like an adult, look sharp, don't look sloppy, and try and just have a vision about what you're doing, have a professionalism about how you act and react to things. If the leadership of your church see that you are doing what you're doing, they are much more likely to advance us financial support to help our youth ministry. Listen, if you can get the leaders on board and seeing that, hey, they're serious about what they're doing, they're going to back you financially. They'll be behind you. I promise you that. Number 13, strategic follow-up. Follow-up happens after everything. You have a guest attend an event that you're doing, follow up with them. Don't leave that hanging. Get their cell phone number, get their, find out if they're on Facebook or, most students aren't on Facebook, but find out if they're on social media and connect with them, figure it out and try to reach out to them sometime during the week. Send them a postcard, send them a text message, whatever, just to kind of tell them thank you for coming. If we want our youth ministry to be home-like, we must know where our students are. If they don't attend church, we need to follow up with them. Invite them to your next event or student ministry activity. Letter C, what to do with your planned values. Number 1, make your values known. Create maybe a banner as in your student ministry room, in your space that has your values up there. Communicate them. Say them often. Preach through them during the year. Tell them to your leaders and your student leaders and try to communicate them and help them practice and show them what it looks like to practice those values. Number 2, model your values to your leadership. Number 3, show how your values affect different areas of your ministry. And number 4, create questions to assess the effectiveness of your values. So this is when you got to evaluate it. You got to see, hey, look, if we're really wanting to accept people, do we have a ton of rules that kind of push a lot of people out? If we really want to have students share and be intimate with a leader and share some of the deep struggles that they have, do we have a safe place, or have we kind of broken down the walls of confidentiality? There's a lot of different things. You got to have some questions that you're asking on a regular basis to assess whether or not you are communicating the values and effectively, seeing those values come to fruition. So the next chapter we're going to look at is this: teaming up with parents for a family-friendly youth ministry. For a family-friendly youth ministry. And so this one's one I'm really, really passionate about. I can say this: when I started out in student ministry, I was completely scared of parents. I started out when I was like 22 years old, full-time. Before that, I was an intern at our church, and our church did not have a youth pastor. So I was literally kind of like the youth pastor as an intern, though. And I would do that during the summers while I was in college. And so a lot of times I was running events. I was taking them to conferences. I was doing that at age 19, 20 years old because they had no one else doing it. And so I was young. And a lot of times I was just, I was scared of parents. I was intimidated by them. And so it kind of startled me to try and start ministering to them and changing my philosophy of ministry more from just a youth ministry to a family ministry. And so I began really researching what that looks like, and recognized that my calling was not just to reach teenagers, it was to reach families. And you need to recognize that when you are called to a church, it's easy just to become, hey, I'm reaching all these teenagers. We need to look at if we can reach the family, the chance of longevity of spiritual growth in that family's life and that teenager's life is way greater than if we just reach the teenager by themselves. A great book you should read is Think Orange, all right? And Think Orange is a book that I highly recommend, and you have to read it in one of my classes here in the college, and it's by Reggie Joiner. It talks about the importance of bridging the gap, pulling the church and the family together and thinking orange. And so teaming up with parents for a family-friendly youth ministry. So how do we do that? How do we build it? And step number one is this: create a teamwork mentality. We need to create a teamwork mentality. How do you do that? Letter A, recognize your limited role as a youth worker. Here's the truth. You are not the primary discipler of the students in your youth ministry. The parents are. A lot of times you might feel like you're the only one who cares about it, and you might be, and I hate that. But listen, at the end of the day, I am not going to stand before God and have to answer for the spiritual maturity of every single teenager that I've ever come across. No, but their parents will. I'm going to have to answer for our youth ministry and how I led the youth ministry. But listen, parents are responsible for their kids and their spiritual growth. That doesn't discount your role, but I'm saying you should be an important role in their life, but you're not the main role. And so you got to have a teamwork. Like, you're here partnering. You're here working with the parents, not against them. Letter B, develop relationships with parents. Develop relationships with parents. Listen, you should have parents over for dinner. You should, when you go to games for teenagers, don't just, it's easy. I remember the days I would go over there and sit with the teenagers, and that's where I was all the time. And I realized, man, I'm missing some incredible opportunities to sit with their parents and to build relationships with them. And so find ways to develop those relationships. Letter C, ask parents about their fears with parenting. Parents have a lot of questions, and they need to be sharing those things, and they feel sometimes embarrassed because they look at other parents who are doing things a little differently and possibly better, and they feel like they don't measure up. So you need to have an open space for parents to ask questions, and that you can help them with those. Be sensitive of family priorities. Be sensitive of family priorities. Listen, summer, vacation, that's a big deal. Parents want to get their kids involved in school activities. They want to get them involved in sports. And listen, you need to be sensitive to that. Don't war against it. Look, I used to get so mad at kids who would play sports and not come to my youth activities. And I realized that, look, those are things that are important and that they enjoy doing. And so I tried to watch out. I wouldn't schedule big activities for Friday nights because of football games and stuff like that. I try to work around the calendar that families have. I'd be sensitive to their priorities in the summer with different trips that they have going on with vacations. I would let them know way in advance so that they weren't like, oh, we're already on vacation that week. Wow, I wish we had it known sooner. And so make sure you're sensitive to those things. Support parental teaching. Support the parents. If a kid comes to you and says, man, my mom and dad, they got mad at me about this, support them. Openly support them. Don't say, well, your parents are crazy. It's easy sometimes to think that way, but don't do that. Don't war against the parents. Try to support them. Do it in a loving way. Step number 2, you need to keep communication clear. I am telling you right now, if you can learn communication in student ministry, you are going to be a great youth pastor. And I'm not just talking about platform communication and preaching and things like that. I'm talking about just communicating from week to week, keeping people informed about what is going on in your ministry. You need to communicate regularly. Don't just communicate randomly. So I'm saying, hey, figure out the best system for you. When I first started, monthly was when I would communicate with families. And so I would communicate once a month. I'd send them a letter. And back then, listen, letters were normal, all right? So I get it. Email was not as big. And so it was a thing, but it wasn't as big as just letters in the mail. And so, but then I realized very quickly, man, there's a lot that happens in a month. So I started just doing a weekly simple email each and every week on Friday called Get Connected. And I'd send it out every Friday to parents. And it would just keep them connected. And here's what I would do. I'd tell them what we're learning each and every week. And I would tell them all the activities of that week and the expectations. And then I'd give them the next couple of months dates of big ideas. And then I'd share one thing that I've read that week that might help them parent their kids and parent their teenagers. And so it was simple. It literally was probably 500 words or less. It was nothing major. It wasn't too long. And I didn't have a lot of flashy stuff. I did no pictures or anything like that. It was a simple email through Outlook. And that's all it was every Friday. So you need to learn what is the best way for you to communicate to your parents and communicate regularly, not randomly. Communicate encouragement to them. So sometimes I would just go through a list. I'd have about 2 a day, and I'd encourage parents. I would just tell them how great their kids are and how I appreciate them having their student in our student ministry. And I just tell them, you're doing a good job, and try to lift them up. I try to inspire and motivate them. They need to hear that, because most of the time, every time they hear from a teacher, every time they hear from a principal, every time they hear from people, it's because their kid did something bad. I want parents to be hearing some things because their kids did good. And so communicate encouragement. Letter C, communicate professionalism. Proofread your emails. Don't just say, well, I'm just not good at grammar, so here it goes. No, I'm saying proofread them. If you're not good at it, have someone else proofread it. And so be professional with the way you word things and things like that. So have a rough draft and let it go through before it's actually sent out to families. Encourage two-way communication. Encourage two-way communication. Create a way for them to communicate back to you, for them to give you feedback. Have meetings where they can ask questions. Have dinners where you ask them questions and they can respond and give you feedback. Encourage two-way communication. Don't just create a system where you as the youth leader are communicating to them, but they have no way to really respond and ask any questions or give you feedback. Step 3, find family resources for them. Letter A, find the been there parents. One thing, and I'll talk about this a little bit in a moment, but we would create these luncheons, and I loved it because I would let them ask questions, and I would have parents who have already been there, been through that, go through and talk to other parents about certain things. I love doing that because it was just something that I think encouraged parents that I cared, that I reached out to a parent, hey, they've been through a situation that a lot of these families are facing right now, and can you share about it? And they would, and it was a really good thing. Also, there's a lot of good resources, and so you need to be reading up on parents. If a book on parenting comes out, read it. If a blogger starts writing about parenting, read it. There's a lot of blogs. I could name you 15 blogs right now that you should have in your feed on a regular basis, reading about family ministry and helping parents disciple their kids. Those should be things that you're having regular conversations, sending out to parents, helping them, and things like that. So step 4, facilitate family learning. Letter A, use experienced parents as teachers. Use experienced parents as teachers. And here's the truth. I get it. You're going to be 22, whatever, how old you are. You might be older than that. And you might be thinking, man, I know it all about parents. I get it. And you might know a ton about it. But parents sometimes, if they're looking at someone who doesn't have kids, it's hard for them to just really listen to all the parenting advice that they have to give. So I'd encourage you, use experienced parents as teachers from time to time in your parent meetings. Letter B, share cultural expertise. Share your cultural expertise. You should be reading about culture. You should know the top 10 songs that teenagers are listening to. You can find all that through iTunes. And you should know that. And you should know the demographic. You should know the movies that are coming out that teenagers are watching and that they care about. You should know the top apps that teenagers are downloading. You can find all of that. And so you'll be like, wow, no, I can know all that. You can find it down to what 13 to 18-year-olds are doing. So I'd encourage you to share your cultural expertise with them. Letter C, create the I'm normal meetings. I'm normal meetings. Here's what I mean by that. Parents find it liberating when they realize they're not alone in their situation. Step number 5, design family programs. Design family programs. Use your crowd program for a regular parents' night. Create a table talk through your congregation program and facilitate family fun. Facilitate family fun. Step number 6. And I know I'm running through this, but I got quite a bit of notes I want to run through as well. Step number 6. Add parents to your volunteer team. I know there's a tension with this, but add parents to your volunteer team. I think that's a good thing. Now, I never put a parent as a small group leader of their own student, of their own kid. And but I had parents helping me serve on Wednesday nights. I believe in it. I think it helps us. It creates a family ministry, gives them an opportunity to serve, but it also gives them an opportunity to influence and listen. They're dealing with a lot of different things as parents. It helps me. It keeps me sharp. If I only have college kids who don't parent teenagers, then I'm going to probably not stay as sharp when it comes to reaching families. Step number 7. Offer parents a spiritual life plan. Help them grow. Okay, so we think so strategically about helping teenagers grow. Start thinking strategically about how you can help your parents grow in their faith and things like that. So try to take them deeper. Try to get them to volunteer more. Try to get them to serve in the church. Try to get them to attend the church. Try to get them on a spiritual Bible reading plan. Whatever it takes. Offers parents a spiritual life plan. Now, that's all from Doug Fields' Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. I want to talk briefly about planning and executing an excellent parent meeting. These are some things I've learned because I've had some disastrous parent meetings, and I've had parent meetings where I had 5-10% of my parents show up. By the way, that's not good. You should have way more of a higher percentage show up. So I've had to learn a lot through this. And this is something that you're going to be doing so often, running parent meetings, having parent meetings about different things. And so I want to kind of run through this, and I think that this will help you out. Number 1, reasons parents don't attend meetings. Here's why, okay? Many of our meetings could be explained in an email. Have you ever been asked to a meeting and you're like, why am I here? I could have gotten all this through an email. Well, that's how a lot of our parent meetings are. And so those are things that you need to stop. You need to make sure that they have some substance to these meetings that couldn't have been explained in an email. Letter B, they have children not old enough to stay at home by themselves. So if they have a 14-year-old and they have a 6-7-year-old, here's the deal. They are going to have to bring them, and they don't want to sit through it, and so they don't know what to do, so they just choose not to come. Childcare is important. You need to provide it. It needs to be free, and that will help eliminate that excuse from families. Letter C, meetings feel meaningless. All right, so you need to have substance in your meeting, and so don't just go in there and be like, how's it going? And that's all you have. You need to have meaning and substance behind them. You need to have a schedule. You need to have things like that. If they don't have any meaning, don't even have a meeting for it. There are too many, letter D, there are too many meetings. Don't try to meet with your parents every single week. It's not going to happen. Once a month might even be a stretch for families if you try to do that for 12 months. And so try to figure out a time that gets your families in a room, gets a high percentage of families in a room, and have them meaningful. And letter E, they're only information driven. This is where I struggled. The only meetings I did when I first, the only parent meetings I ever did when I first started on student ministry was when we were going on a trip or I needed to give them some information about an activity. I would literally be like, all right, ski trip meeting or mission trip meeting or bowling meeting or whatever. Don't have them only information driven. Parents, they can get information, they can text you, you can get all that through email. Here's what they want. They want some meaningful time with you and the leaders, and they want to ask questions, they want to learn. And so those are some things you need to be thinking about. Number 2, the 3 must-haves for every single parent meeting. The first one is food. Here's the deal. I'm not joking. If you have food, you're immediately going to catch the eyes of the parents. It doesn't have to be a full meal all the time, but it needs to be something. And so have food, have letter B, childcare, and do it free for parents. Pay some of your teenagers to watch the kids. Give them a little bit of extra money, budget for it, whatever. Letter C, there needs to be a schedule. So if you have an hour, you need to know what you're going to be doing. We're going to eat for the first 10 minutes. I'm going to get up and introduce our small group leaders. I'm going to talk about something relating to youth culture and parenting. Then I'm going to talk about this activity coming up. Then I'm going to say whatever. You need to have a schedule and stay on point. Number 3, here's some tips. All right, here's the deal. Here's some tips that you need to implement for some game-changing parent meetings. Letter A, engage the parents. Engage them. Here's why is number 1. They're going to show up if they're engaged to something. Kerry Newhoff on his blog, he writes a lot about attendance and attendance patterns today rather than 20 years ago. And he says that engagement fuels attendance. And I agree 100%. For instance, on Sunday, if we don't schedule a ton of people to serve, it's going to affect our attendance. People sometimes, if they're not engaged through serving or doing something, some form of an ownership, they just don't come to things like they used to, just to sit there. And they want to own, they want to be engaged with it. So engage the parents. And here's what I would encourage you to do. Number 1, have an RSVP. If they RSVP to something, they're much less likely to back out of something. So I'd have them sign up. I'd also ask them to bring something, bring a drink, bring a dessert, bring something to get them engaged. Because on the day of, you're going to have way less cancellations if they knew that they were responsible for bringing something. Also, parents enjoy kind of getting involved. Especially, we would do once a quarter, and we would have these luncheons for them. And so once a quarter is not a lot for them to make something. And then I do giveaways. Give parents a reason to come. I'd give away a $50 gift card, $100 gift card. I'd budget for these things, have a few of these a year. And it'd give a parent a real reason to come if they know, hey, I have a chance of winning something. Letter B, provide free childcare. We've talked about that. Letter C, resource them. resource them, share updates on youth culture and what teenagers are into. You would be surprised that if you're doing student ministry right now, you'd be surprised how little parents know what their students are into. I'm serious. It's because I'm 33 years old. When I grew up, we did not have smartphones. Okay, so it was not something that we knew about. We didn't know that all that was available to them. Parents hardly realize that pornography is a click away on a student's smartphone. All right, they don't understand apps. They're literally, if you look at how they're always behind. Parents are jumping onto Facebook now when teenagers were on it way back. Parents are just now getting on Snapchat, and students are trying to migrate from different ways. And so parents are always 2 or 3 steps behind. You can keep them up to date and up to speed with all the things relating to youth culture and parenting. Recommend books on parenting. Resource your parents. And so if you find a good resource, a blog or a book, recommend it to them, share it with them, possibly purchase it if you have the money for them. Letter D, create a good environment. Always have music playing when they arrive. I'm a stickler about this, man. I can't stand walking into a room and not have music. You don't walk into department stores and no music's playing. It's always playing. Restaurants, same thing. And the reason is they're creating an environment. And listen, if you walk into a youth room and there's no music, you're creating an environment nobody wants to come to. So have something going, have noise going. Number 2, have someone greeting them at the door. It shows that you've planned for this. It shows you're ready for this. It shows that you have thought about this meeting and that you're treating it like an actual program, not just a time just random to get together. Number 3, have refreshments. Allow them to get drinks right when they come in. There's something about food and drinks that make them feel comfortable. E, stick to your schedule. Don't go long. If you said you're going to go 60 minutes, go 60 minutes. Don't go longer. Don't go 70. And I know, the Spirit of the Lord can work, and I get it. But listen, He's not working too long after the allotted time that you told parents. I'll just tell you that. So stick to your schedule. Parent meetings shouldn't be longer than an hour. I think that's plenty. Start and end on time. If you say you're starting at 6 o'clock, start at 6. Don't start at 6:15. Don't enable latecomers too. Sometimes you're like, man, I know parents are coming. We got to wait for them. Don't enable it, because then they'll say, man, I need to be on time next time. Make their time valuable to you. F, serve them a meal. G, connect your small group leaders with the parents of the meeting. So here's what I would do. I would have, when we did our meetings, I'd have a 7th grade boys table, or a section of a table, and I'd have the 7th grade, if they're a parent of a 7th grade boy, they would sit there, and the small group leader would sit with them. And it was an opportunity for them just to kind of eat, enjoy time hanging out with one another, and connect them and things like that. You'd be surprised how many parents don't know their small group leaders that well. And that's some of the small group leaders' fault, some of the parents' fault. And this is an opportunity to bridge that gap. H, challenge and encourage them. I always would give them a challenge, motivating them. They can do it. We're in this together. High School Musical theme song kind of style. And I try to really encourage them and challenge and motivate them every way I can. We're almost done. Letter I, share information. Listen, if you got some big activities coming up next few months, use this as enough time to share about them. Parents are going to ask questions they like to know in advance. Hey, they want to know costs. So don't say, hey, we got this activity in 3 weeks. And if you don't come to that meeting, if you don't know the cost, the times you're leaving, the times you're returning, what you're going to be doing, if they need to wear or bring something, whatever. You need to know all the information, because parents want to know in advance. You and I sometimes can focus, oh man, we got something next week. I got plenty of time. They want to know these things weeks prior, so you need to know them going into it. Always have a J. Always have a Q and A. Always have a Q and A. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you. I've had parents ask me so many deep questions through the Q&A, and it's always been incredible. Sometimes I'll stand there and I'll be like, oh my goodness, I don't know this. And another parent will just chime in and say, hey, I faced that same thing, and they'll start talking, and it is just an incredible experience. So I always have a Q&A, allow them to ask questions. Don't let it drag on or get off point. Sometimes you have the talkative parents, and it could go way too long. So make sure you stay on point there. K, pray over your parents. Pray over them. And so a lot of times I'd end it and we'd hold out our hands together, and we would just pray for one another. And then the last one, be available for one-on-ones after the meeting. I'd usually at least stay 30 minutes afterwards and talk to any parent that needed to talk, because a lot of them might have personal things going on with their kids they want to share with you, and you should take the time to do it. And so that's some tips on a parent meeting. I'm sure you have some other good ideas. If you have any questions about things like that, I would love to chat with you a little bit more about it and things like that. But listen, week 5 and week 6 is coming, and we appreciate you tuning in to this message this week in this lecture video. And if you have any questions from week to week about assignments or anything like that, please get with me. You can email me or you can call me, send me a message, whatever, and we will be in touch. Have a great week.